Hi everyone, and welcome to SEIRIM Cybersecurity Daily Report. So today we're going to discuss the following news. And the first one, Cisco Firewall vulnerability exploited a zero-day in Interlock ransomware attacks. And the second news, critical CrackArmor vulnerabilities exposed 12.6 million Linux servers to full root takeover. Huh. Hi Steven. So how are you today?
Oh, good. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Great. Okay, so let's start. A critical vulnerability in Cisco Security Firewall Management Center has been at the center of recent ransomware activity targeting enterprise environments. The issue, tracked as CVE 2026-2131, is a remote code execution flaw in the platform's web-based management interface. It stems from insecure deserialization, where the system improperly processes incoming data. An attacker can send a specially crafted request that the system interprets in a dangerous way, ultimately allowing execution of arbitrary code. What makes this especially severe is that the attack doesn't require authentication. So, if the interface is exposed or reachable, an attacker can attempt exploitation without needing valid credentials. Once successful, they can gain root-level access, which gives them full control over the system. The vulnerability moved quickly from a technical weakness to an active threat. Reports highlighted by Security Week, along with finding from Amazon's threat intelligence team, show that it was exploited as a zero-day by a ransomware group known as Interlock. That means attackers were already using it in real-world attacks before organizations had broadly applied patches or mitigations. According to Amazon's analysis, the attackers specifically targeted enterprise firewall infrastructure using this vulnerability as their initial access point. Instead of relying on phishing emails or stolen credentials, they went straight after the firewall management layer itself, a highly trusted and centralized component in most networks. Because this system manages security policies and has visibility across network traffic, compromising it provides a strong foothold inside the environment. Once access was established, the attackers were able to execute commands on the system and begin expanding their presence within the network. Their behavior aligned with ransomware operations, where initial access is followed by deeper exploration, persistence, and preparations for broader impact across systems. The activity was observed during a window where the vulnerability was not yet widely mitigated, which is what classifies it as a zero-day exploitation scenario. During that time, organizations running affected versions of the management platforms were exposed, particularly if their interfaces were accessible from untrusted networks. So, the combination of a remotely exploitable flaw, lack of authentication requirements, and its placement is a core security management system made this vulnerability a high-value target, one that attackers quickly leveraged in coordinated ransomware campaigns.
Yeah, this was pretty
So,
wild, pretty terrible. I don't know if you mentioned it already, but this has a severity score of 10. It is the highest level of criticality, so it's quite terrible. And there's not
it's very
much that can be
serious.
done about it. You have to patch, basically. And the patch is not available yet. And it's necessary to keep abreast of the developments for this case. Because it affects so many Cisco systems, it's quite important to stay apprised of the situation. Currently, the recommendation is to use a higher level of software, and Cisco provides a software checker. We'll give the link in the description where you can check your version of software, and if it is vulnerable, you have to upgrade. It's the secure FMC software that's attacked here, and also the Cisco Security Cloud Control. So that's the SCC Firewall Manager, right? But that one, the second one, they upgraded because it's from the cloud, and they're upgrading it for the users, right? So it's the case of the FMC that you have to do the upgrade and the patching. Now, when the patching is available. But in the meantime, the recommendation is that you have to make sure the FMC management interface is not publicly accessible. That
Yes.
is key, and that's the vulnerability area. That's the weakness is if you have that publicly facing. So that is generally a best practice to get right, is if you have the systems hardening focus, any interface like that the public doesn't need access to, get it back for the public, only have it for internal, have it really limited in accessibility to only trusted IPs, only trusted users in really tight network areas. So those are my recommendations and takeaways for that. The Cisco firewall vulnerability, which is incredibly severe. So if you have a Cisco firewall, please take note and check on these issues.
Thank you for your takeaways. It's very important. Okay, now let's talk about the second news. Critical CrackArmor vulnerabilities exposed 12.6 million Linux servers to full root takeover. A newly disclosed set of vulnerabilities in Linux AppArmor security model, collectively called CrackArmor, has raised concern because of how widely AppArmor is used and how deeply these flaws affect system security. AppArmor is a core Linux security feature that enforces restrictions on what applications are allowed to do. It's commonly enabled by default in major distributions like Ubuntu, Debian, and SUSE, and is widely used across enterprise servers, cloud environments, and containerized systems. The issue here is that researchers from Qualys identified multiple flaws in how AppArmor enforces those restrictions, meaning the very system designed to contain threats can be manipulated instead. These vulnerabilities are described as confused deputy issues. In simple terms, the system can be tricked into performing actions on behalf of a low-privileged user that should normally require higher privileges. This happens through the way AppArmor interacts with certain systems components, including pseudo files and profile handling, allowing attackers to bypass intended security boundaries. Two of the cracked vulnerabilities, CVE 2026-23-268 and CVE 2026-23-269, specifically enable local privilege escalation. That means an attacker who already has basic access to the system, like a standard user account, for example, can exploit these flaws to gain root privileges. Root access effectively gives full control over the system, including the ability to modify configurations, execute any commands, and disable protections. What makes this more significant is that the scale of exposure. Reports indicate that around 12.6 million Linux systems could be affected, largely because AppArmor is so widely deployed and often runs by default. This includes enterprise servers, cloud workloads, and environments that rely heavily on container isolation, where AppArmor plays a key role in enforcing boundaries between workloads. The vulnerabilities have reportedly existed for several years, with some dating back to around 2017. Because of that, a large number of systems may have been running with these weaknesses without being aware of them. Researchers demonstrated that these flaws can be chained together, allowing attackers to move from limited access to full system control by bypassing AppArmor's protection entirely. Overall, the issue centers on a breakdown in trust within a core Linux security mechanism. Instead of strictly enforcing access controls, AppArmor can be leveraged in certain scenarios to elevate privileges, making it possible for attackers with initial access to take complete control of affected systems.
Incredible.
Stephen, what do you think about this news?
With 12.6 million Linux systems potentially affected, this is a massive impact. They're going from Ubuntu, Debian, SUSE, and other cloud platforms, including enterprise environments, Kubernetes, and more. It's quite dramatic. Now, it's so recent that the CVEs for this only just came out in the past half a day. So it's quite soon. The mitigations are there. We need to apply kernel patches, right? So you deploy the latest vendor security updates for all affected distributions, specifically targeting any kernel versions newer than 4.11. Secondly, you can scan for exposure utilizing your vulnerability scanner of choice that hopefully covers this to identify unpatched assets, right? Prioritizing internet-facing servers, containers, and legacy deployments. Generally, we also recommend file integrity monitoring and monitoring profile integrity, which monitors the system's AppArmor directory for unexpected file changes, profile removals, or unauthorized modifications that could indicate active exploitation attempts. So those are the 3 things to be done there. But if you have a Linux server on Ubuntu, Debian, SUSE, and more, apply those kernel patches is the recommendation. Quite impactful, this.
So today we're talking about hidden vulnerabilities that no one was expected to have, right? To be prepared for everything, just listen to our podcast and we will tell you all the news that we find online and you will be up to date. So thank you, Steven, for takeaways, and thank you guys for watching. You can find all links to the articles we mentioned today in the description below, and I hope you have a very good weekend.
Thank
you
you
for watching. Bye.
Bye-bye.